sea remembers what people forget. Its waves carry stories that no one was meant to hear. Messages whispered into bottles, tears swallowed by tides, names carved into stones that the world no longer visits. There was a town once, quiet, almost forgotten, somewhere along the rugged coast of Maine. The kind of place where the fog rolled in thick as milk, and the ocean sang lullabies only the lonely could hear. On the edge of that town stood an old lighthouse, white, chipped, a wound of rust circling its top. For most, it was just a relic. But for one woman, it was everything. Her name was Eleanor Finch, and she had spent almost 30 years of her life watching over that lighthouse. Alone. No one knew why she never left. No one knew what kept her walking up those spiral steps every morning, lantern in hand, eyes on the horizon. They just knew that when the foghorn sounded at dawn, Eleanor would be there, a ghost among the gulls. Eleanor wasn't always alone. There had been someone once, a man named Thomas Hale, a writer who had come to the coast in the summer of 1964 to find inspiration and ended up finding her instead. He was tall, quiet, and always carried a notebook in his pocket. He'd sit near the cliffs every evening, sketching words into paper as the sun dipped behind the ocean. Eleanor had been the lighthouse keeper's assistant back then, young, full of questions about the world beyond the shore. Their first conversation was about light. He had asked her why she thought lighthouses were built. To keep people from getting lost, she'd said, and Thomas had smiled, that kind of soft, knowing smile that hides an entire storm behind it. No, he replied. I think they exist to remind us that even the loneliest things can shine. That was the beginning. They spent that summer together, not in the way stories often romanticize love, but in a quieter way. They read books on the porch, painted driftwood, and wrote letters they never sent. Thomas said he was writing a novel, something about a woman who guided ships to safety, even when no one guided her. He promised Eleanor she would be the heart of it. But the sea, like love, has its tempers. One stormy night in September, Thomas left to photograph the ocean from the cliffs. The rain was violent. The wind howled like something alive. The next morning, only his notebook was found. Damp, pages torn, ink washed away. The town said he'd fallen. The coast was cruel that year. But Eleanor, she never believed he was gone. For the next 3 decades, she stayed. Every night, she lit the lamp. Every morning, she walked the cliffs where he used to sit. And every day, she wrote him letters, hundreds of them, telling him about the tides, about the weather, about how much the world had changed without him. She never mailed them. She simply folded each one neatly, tied it with twine, and buried it beneath the old lighthouse floorboards. When people asked why she never left, she'd just smile faintly and say, because he might come back, and someone should be here to tell him where the light is. Years passed. The lighthouse was decommissioned, the town nearly abandoned. By the time Eleanor turned 70, the sea had taken half the cliff away. Still, she stayed, until one morning when she didn't light the lamp. A fisherman found her the next day, sitting in her chair facing the ocean, her hands resting on an unopened envelope on her lap. No one knew where it came from, no return address, just her name, written in a familiar, trembling script. Months later, a young photographer named Lydia Clark arrived in town. She'd inherited the lighthouse from a distant relative she'd never met, Eleanor Finch. Lydia planned to restore it, turn it into an art gallery, maybe even a cafe. But when she began the renovations, she found something unusual. Under the cracked wooden floorboards near the keeper's quarters was a small, rusted tin box, wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were hundreds of letters, perfectly preserved, each one addressed to "My dearest Thomas." Lydia read them one by one. They weren't just love letters, they were a record of time itself. Eleanor had written through wars, winters, elections, and empty Christmases. Her handwriting aged as the world did. But her words never stopped waiting. The last letter was dated 2 days before she died. Said simply, "If you ever find this, know that I kept the light burning. Not to guide ships, but to remind myself that love, once found, never truly leaves." Lydia couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was Thomas Hale? What happened to him? She decided to find out. Through public records, old newspapers, and maritime archives, Lydia pieced together fragments of his story. Thomas Hale had indeed gone missing in 1964. His body was never recovered. But 2 months after his disappearance, a merchant ship had reported an unnamed man rescued from debris far out at sea. The man suffered amnesia and never remembered his past. His name on the hospital report? Thomas Finch. The surname hers. Lydia's heart raced as she read further. The man had lived quietly in Nova Scotia for decades, painting seascapes, writing letters to no one. He died only 5 years before Eleanor did. Among his belongings, one painting stood out, a white lighthouse on a foggy cliff, and a small figure at its base, holding a lantern toward the sea. That night, Lydia stood where Eleanor once did. The ocean was calm, the sky glowing with stars. She imagined them, Eleanor and Thomas, two souls separated by tides and time, each waiting for the other, each believing the other had been lost. But maybe love doesn't end with loss. Maybe it only changes form, from voice to silence, from letter to light. Lydia placed Eleanor's last letter inside the tin box and reburied it beneath the lighthouse floor. Then she lit the old lamp one final time. The beam cut through the fog, a thin line between earth and heaven, and somewhere far beyond the sea, perhaps in some unseen corner of the afterlife, two lights found each other again. The piano fades, the waves whisper, the screen turns to black, and a single line appears. For those who wait by the shore, the sea never forgets.